Okay, good evening and welcome. We are going to start this meeting. And first, I'm going to hand it over to our interpreter, Viviana Marzano, who's going to make an announcement about our available interpretation.
Good evening. I'm going to be the interpreter English and Spanish today. If you are bilingual English and Spanish, you don't need to make any selection. Buenas tardes, yo voy a ser la intérprete hoy entre inglés y español. Si usted es bilingüe inglés y español, no tiene que hacer ninguna selección. If you are connected via a laptop or a computer, after the interpretation feature is activated, you will see a globe at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Click on the globe, click on interpretation, and select your language. If you are calling from a smartphone or an iPad, you will see a three-dot menu. Click on the three dots, click on language interpretation, click on English, and done. Buenas noches. Si usted está conectado por una computadora o un laptop, después que se active la interpretación, usted va a ver un globo terráqueo en la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla. Haga clic en interpretación, haga clic en Spanish o inglés o español. Si usted está conectado en un teléfono o una tableta, va a haber un menú de 3 puntos. Presiona el menú de 3 puntos, elija Language Interpretation o interpretación de idiomas, elija Spanish o español y al finalizar puede elegir finalizar o done. If there are no questions, we can proceed with the meeting. Si no hay ninguna pregunta, podemos continuar con la junta.
All right, I'm going to activate
The host can
the interpretation.
enable me.
Yes, here we go. All right, so we are ready for interpretation. Thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Hillary Blackerby. I'm the Planning and Marketing Manager for Santa Barbara MTD. Appreciate you tuning in. In the good old days, we would have these in person, but obviously that's not possible right now. So we appreciate you making it to our virtual meeting. I also know, and ours was scheduled first, I swear, that the president's speaking right now. So we did not coordinate our calendars, obviously. So thanks for taking time to be with us today. I'm going to share my screen so that we can get started. And here we go. Okay. So before we get going on the information, just want to let you know how you can ask questions in this webinar. All of you are in listen only mode right now. You won't be able to share your video or screens. Wish I could see your faces. But we'll take questions and comments at the end of the presentation. But in the meantime, if questions pop up, you can use the Q&A feature to go ahead and put your questions in, and then we can answer them towards the end, but you can at least get them in the queue. And the Q&A feature is on the same bar as your mic and stop video, all that kind of thing. You should just see it at the bottom. You won't have mute or stop video, but you should see it at the bottom of your screen that you can select Q&A. I'm also going to start with a poll. So you should see a poll pop up on your screen right now. It has 2 questions. The first is, how did you hear about today's meeting? So if you can click on that, always curious how people find out. And then the second question is, how often do you ride the bus now? So now being these days, how many of you do that? Hopefully the poll popped up for you. Seeing people start to vote. So just answer the 2 questions. You can click on your answers and hit submit. And I'll give you just another 30 seconds or so to let us know About half of you voted in the poll. So seems like people heard about it different ways, social media, news stories, and we've got some once a week bus riders a few times a month and a couple of never riders. So always interested to have people who don't ride the bus come to these so you can see what we're up to. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Share results here. You can see how people voted. All right, so let's go ahead and keep moving. The structure of today's meeting is going to be a presentation. So I'm going to talk to you about what we're proposing for our August 2021 service changes. And then we will go to questions and comments. Trying to keep this to an hour. So I'm going to go as quickly as I can while giving the interpreter time to breathe and making sure it's clear. So first of all, some of you I'm sure have been to our service change meetings in the past. We do this every spring. But this year is obviously different. We've had a lot go on in the past 13 months as a globe, but particularly in transit and an MTD. And so I just want to, as we talk about service restoration, termination, and also, sort of suspension, this is what's driving our decision making here. So first and foremost is public health, maybe making sure we're keeping people safe, making sure that we are following best practices, CDC guidelines, local public health guidelines. Obviously, face coverings are required. That's now federal law on our buses, at all our bus stops, and at the transit center. We have been cleaning and disinfecting all of our buses to the standards that we should, that are happening throughout the industry, and trying to keep our riders and our bus operators safe. So that's the first thing. That's why we have a limited number of people allowed on each bus, etc. Fiscal stability, really important. We do have to have the money to fund the service. And we've been very lucky with the stimulus packages that have come out of Washington, D.C. Transit has been a recipient of some of that funding, but we're trying to make that last long enough to bounce back and get back up to ridership levels that we were used to. The other thing that has sort of ruled our decision making is workforce constraints. You can have all this service planned that you want to put out there, but if you don't have the buses, the bus operators, the mechanics to work on the buses, then you can't do that. And so that's one of the reasons we've scaled back on service, to make sure that we have the workforce to put out the service in the community. We don't want to fall short. And so those constraints continue. We're very lucky that about 80% of our workforce is now fully vaccinated. We're really proud that we're able to make that happen, and appreciate their work throughout this, frankly, scary past year. So things are looking up, but we still need to make sure that we have what we need to put service out there. And then finally, school closures and schedules. And this is something that's sort of special to our agency and our region. We do a tremendous amount of service to the university, to Santa Barbara City College, and to our junior highs and high schools in Santa Barbara Unified. And so throughout the past year, kind of will they or won't they come back to school has been a big factor in what we've been doing. So that continues to be the case. Now it's more about to what extent our campus is reopening. So we'll talk a bit more about that with the lines. So what you're here for, the overview of the 2021 proposed changes. We put these changes into effect every year, mid-August. August 16th, 2021 is when they would go into effect. And I'm going to go deeper into each one of these, but the proposed changes are partial or full restoration of service on lines 15X, 16, 27, and 28. Continued suspension recommended of lines 10, 36, 37, 90, 91, and 92. And termination of the downtown and waterfront shuttles, which are not often called by their line number, but that's lines 30 and 31. So to catch everyone up, if you haven't been, hanging on every movement of MTD, this is a service that we suspended in 2020. In March and April of last year, we suspended, well, the routes I just talked about, bringing back or keeping suspended. We really focused on, when the pandemic hit our county, we focused on two things. First, the campuses were closing. The junior highs and high schools, community college, the university, they all sent everyone home. And so the augmented levels that we normally have to those campuses didn't make any sense. No one was going there. So we pulled that service and suspended it. We did still and do still have service that goes to UCSB and City College. It's just not as much as we normally would when school's in session. The other piece was the lines that, frankly, are different shuttle routes. So Seaside, Crosstown, Downtown and Waterfront shuttles that either have kind of duplicative service, more or less. So the Crosstown shuttle serves the east and west side of Santa Barbara. We do still have the 1 and 2. We kept those schedules robust. A Seaside shuttle, there's not an exact match in Carpinteria, but we still do have the line 20. And then Downtown and Waterfront, obviously, everything was shuttered. No cruise ships and motor vehicles couldn't go up and down State Street. So those are the reasons we made that decision. Also, lines 90, 91, and 92, which were our Amtrak first and last mile shuttles that served the train stations for those peak timed Surfliner trains. We paused that since those trains were no longer running at those times. So that's what we did there. And then, of course, to the secondary schools, there was no point in running those boosters. So since then, in the past year, on March 18th, essentially a year to the day from when we stopped it, as you probably know, Santa Barbara Unified is bringing students back to campus. The lines that are listed here, I won't read them all out, but it's all the booster lines. And they go to the junior highs and high schools. They resumed service on March 18th, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The school district was working in a cohort model, so it was really kind of split in half. So Monday, Thursday was a cohort, Tuesday, Friday was a cohort. As of April 19th, so basically a month later, those schools are now back in person fully, with some students still remote, on all weekdays except Wednesday. And so we have adjusted and sort of boosted our booster service to be able to get everyone to campus. So we're proud that we've been able to do that. We've got 5 more weeks of school, and then summer school starts. So if you are a regular attendee at these service change meetings, you know that every year we say, okay, we're going to make some, sometimes major, the past few years minor, changes to certain schedules of certain lines to fix on-time performance. So we're seeing something is a little late, a little early, there's not enough time in the schedule for it to stick to the printed schedule. And so we've been making those changes, which we've been able to do with technology that we've installed about 5 years ago. Really, really proud to say that as of this moment, based on all the data that we've looked at over the past, well, more than the past year, we are not currently recommending any changes to any schedules for on-time performance reasons. Our schedule is really dialed in, and we are looking to, move forward and not have to make those changes every year. So we are looking at trip level. There's this one trip on this one line on this one day. What's going on? There's different factors and we're trying to address that. But as of this moment, we're not recommending anything. In the next month, we're still looking into it. We may recommend something, but it would be very, very minor, really imperceptible to the regular rider. So I want to thank our staff in the planning department for doing such a great job over the past 5 years to work on this. It wasn't easy and it took a lot of work. So back to service and service restoration. Line 15X, which is the express line from Isla Vista and UCSB to the City College campus. That's been gone. It's not been running since the beginning of the pandemic last March. We are recommending partial or full restoration, and that would be depending on both on-campus enrollment levels and bus operator availability. You're going to hear this on several of these. The reason we can't really nail it down right now, so many things are changing. Even just a month ago, it was looking a little more bleak than it is now. With the number of vaccinations that have rolled out, campuses are starting to talk more about opening more fully. At the same time, we need to make sure, as I mentioned before, that we have enough bus operators to put all the service out there. So before the pandemic, the 15X, it ran Monday through Friday, but Monday through Thursday had a more robust schedule just because Friday, there's just not as many classes on campus. So our headways, which is, time between buses, was depending on the time of day between every 15 minutes to every 30 minutes. Limited service in the summer, and then early January. And like I said, it doesn't run on weekends. So what we're looking at is some level of service to come back on this. It could be, headways that are less frequent than this. It could be the same old headways. So we're still working on that. We want to hear what you think is necessary. So, do weigh in about that. Line 16. So this is the SBCC shuttle. It goes between the transit center and sort of serves West Downtown and then goes to City College. It is actually our only bus that serves the West Campus loop. We're recommending restoration at new service levels. So this would be technically full restoration. Last year, we were recommending some changes to the line 16 schedule. And so if you think back, way back into the schedule we were running in August of 2019, it would be a little less service than it was then. So then the last time the 16 ran. The morning sort of peak time, that would all stay the same, but afternoon headways would go from 20 minutes to every 35 minutes. And so what that means for the whole day is a loss of 5.5 round trips total. We are planning, however, to extend the span of service a little bit longer to the end of the day for the last pickup at West Campus to be about 5:56. The reason being there's several classes that get out and they were getting out and people were missing that last 16 off West Campus. So we're extending that a little bit. So we're recommending to restore at these levels for the 16 to get people between downtown and campus. Line 27. So line 27 is the Isla Vista shuttle. It's the only bus that goes into the heart of Isla Vista, not just on El Colegio and Stork. And it serves Camino Real Marketplace. It has been running the whole time, but we have in blue sky, non-pandemic times, we already have kind of, we're able to toggle between two service levels. One is what we call UCSB in, and one is what we call UCSB out. UCSB in is, as you might imagine, school is fully in session. This is fall, spring, and winter quarters. UCSB out is summer. Obviously, there is summer school, but that's there's just way fewer people around. And then during spring break and things like that. So we kept the 27 running on the UCSB out schedule. It's about 35-minute headways on the weekdays, and it's a little longer on weekends. Those UCSB in headways are every 14 minutes. Again, this is another one like the 15X. The level of service is going to depend on the amount of UCSB students and just folks in general returning to Isla Vista and campus. And if on-campus instruction resumes, which it seems like it is at UCSB, we would recommend restoration to the UCSB in level. So that would be about every 14 minutes. Line 28. This was, before the pandemic, this was our workhorse. This was one, it was every 10 minutes. This is done in partnership with the university. They fund operations of this, which is great. And every 10 minutes, these buses were always full, moving, really important way to move people from sort of the end of Isla Vista and the marketplace down to campus rapidly. So this is what you would see the most of if you're out in IB. Again, the level service depends on the amount of UCSB students coming to campus. How many people are going to be living in those university apartments and dorms? That's information that we are working with UCSB on. They're still figuring it out. And so we're going to figure this out together. This is very robust service, but very robust service every 10 minutes. That takes a lot of buses and drivers throughout the day. And the span of service of this is from the morning to nearly midnight. So that's a lot. So this will come back in some amount. It could be every 10 minutes, but it also could be every 15 or every 35, again, depending on our availability of our human resources and of our fleet resources. So this is another sort of stay tuned, let us know what you think item. Get a sip of water here. These are lines that are currently suspended that we are suggesting, at least for August, to continue the suspension of. I'll talk a bit about each one. Line 10 serves the Cathedral Oaks corridor. Before it was suspended, this line runs very infrequently, runs on the weekdays, and it's about, I don't know, 6 round trips, 8 round trips a day. It's not very much. And it ultimately kind of functions as another booster to the schools along the Cathedral Oaks corridor. What we've done to address this, because we had a lot of parents, a lot of Dos Pueblos parents, Goleta Valley parents, they were really concerned because their kid takes the 10. We were able to increase capacity on one of the school boosters. And that way we're able to sort of address that problem. So it seems like we've been able to do that. So for now, we think the line 10, which is somebody's got to be the lowest performing route, and the line 10 has been that for us for many years. Line 36, the Seaside Shuttle in Carpinteria. For now, we are recommending continued suspension, again, because of workforce issue, but we know this is something people really like and use. So this is, well, it's also a pretty poor performer. It is vital for a lot of folks. We just want to be conservative in what we bring back so that we can make service. What I would say too is while we normally just like to make service changes once a year in August, it's definitely possible that in this year, we're going to end up making some changes mid-year. So maybe in January or early 2022. So I'd stay tuned for that. Line 37, Crosstown Shuttle I mentioned earlier, goes between the east and west side neighborhoods. It's kind of different areas than the 1 and 2, but they're fairly close together and they both serve downtown in the middle. We're still recommending to keep that suspended again now for August and see what we can do moving forward. I mentioned this before, the 3 Amtrak lines are paused for now. We're waiting for those peak time trains to come back. The last bit I heard was the earliest they'd be back is early 2022. So, and that would be for both of them. So we need both of them to come back in order to provide this service. Okay, service termination. I know this is what many of you attending are here for, and I don't blame you. We have recommended the termination of the downtown and waterfront shuttle service. To go back a bit and just sort of talk about the facts on the ground, City of Santa Barbara is currently maintaining the closure of State Street to motor vehicles. It seems like, based on the direction of the City Council and the sort of community will, it's going to be closed to motor vehicles for certainly a while, possibly forever. So that automatically changes the dynamic of the downtown shuttle. Traditional waterfront ridership drivers are not back in operation at this time. Back last April, when we said, okay, we're going to pause the shuttle service, people aren't even allowed to leave their house. So they're not going to be bopping around downtown. And the city of Santa Barbara, they help fund this service, fund the operation of the service through it's called a fare buy down. You may know that, it's $1.75 on our regular routes, only 50 cents on downtown and waterfront shuttle. That is not because it's cheaper to run. It costs just the same. We pay the drivers just the same, but the city used downtown parking revenues to buy down that fare to make it cheaper. And that was to the tune of a little over $1 million a year with a contract with the city. They let us know last May that they did not have the fiscal resources to fund that this current fiscal year. And so we said, well, let's don't terminate the contract yet. Let's suspend it for now and see how the year goes. Certainly looking back in May, none of us knew what was going to happen over the next year. They're still saying that they do not have the resources, this is Public Works staff, to continue the service. And so at that point, without that financial assistance, we do not have the ability to, in any sustainable, short or long-term way, have the ability to maintain that service without that subsidy. It's a difficult conversation to have, but that's where we are at this point. There's so much exciting stuff going on with talking about downtown and State Street, housing, revitalization, reimagining what it's like to get around down there. MTD must be a part of that conversation. Transit must be a component of downtown circulation if it's truly going to be a successful downtown. So we need to be a part of that conversation. We hope that you will be there alongside us, reminding folks, the city council and their committee, what an important component transit is to a vibrant downtown. And we can think in the future what that would look like. So that's what we're recommending at this time. Line 36. So I mentioned that line 36 is the Seaside Shuttle is paused for now. However, last year we were planning on looking at changing the routing of the Seaside if and when it comes back. We didn't go out to the public about it last year because it wasn't running and we had sort of bigger fish to fry. But this year, for you Carpinterians out there, we do want to get some feedback of what we're looking at for routing. So obviously it's currently suspended, could come back this next year. We're assessing the routing, possibly routing it off of Ogun Road, and I'll show some maps in a second, to either Shamara or El Caro Lane. And it would require a closure of 2 stops. So I'll show you, this is current routing. When it was running, this is what it was doing. It serves the neighborhoods in Carpinteria on the north side of the freeway and then goes over, and it's a true circulator. Serves the Amtrak station and downtown Linden and Carpinteria Avenue. So that's what it does. If you see over in the right hand side where Ogun Road off Casitas Pass, the shuttle turns left on Ogan Road, right on Camino Triado, and then left on El Carro Lane, stops at El Carro Park. So these are the two possibilities. And this is obviously, there are a lot of different ways you could route this, but we were trying to keep it as close to the existing route as possible. This would be onto Shamara. So the reason we're even thinking about this is we had a couple of complaints from people who lived on Ogan Road who, because of the freeway projects, plural, a lot of people were using Ogan Road as sort of a frontage to get around freeway traffic and congestion. And so Ogan was sort of taking a beating. Our shuttles were just one more thing on the road. So this would be, the bus would go on Casitas Pass, left on Shamara. We would be able to add a stop at Shamara and Haida is the small cross street here. It's not shown on the map, but it's right where that dot is. Then the bus would, as it did before, right on Camino Triado, left on El Carro Lane. The other possibility, we would lose those two stops and it would go up Casitas Pass, left on El Carro Lane. And then that first stop would be El Carro Park. This is, I would say, want everyone's input, but a little less than ideal because those stops are pretty far apart, the one on Casitas Pass and then the El Carro Park stop. So having it on Shamara would mean there'd be one there in the neighborhood. So that's that. So before we go to questions and comments, I want to talk to you about next steps and ways that you can get involved and give further feedback. You're doing a great thing, which is attending here tonight. One, we encourage you to take our survey. Even if you give feedback tonight, please do take the survey. It is in English and Spanish at our website, sbmtd.gov/service changes. You can also just find it if you just go to our website. Please do take the survey. It takes 5 minutes. It explains everything I've explained here and then gives you the ability to give your feedback. We are going to take that feedback, any feedback you give tonight, and we have another virtual meeting. Please tell those who couldn't attend, who you know care about these things, or your friends and neighbors. We're going to have another one of these, same topic, same information. So if you're here tonight, you don't really need to come back to that one. It's Tuesday, May 11th at noon, and they can register at that same website I just mentioned. If you have sort of a longer comment, you're welcome to email that to info@sbmtd.gov, and we will log all of that information. We gather all this info from the survey, from public input, and we will be sharing it with the board of directors for their May 18th meeting. And that meeting is at 8:30 a.m. It's virtual, it's on Zoom. You can get the information from our website. And that's when they're going to decide on a service plan for August. So we have this whole month to collect information and then give it to them, and they will make those decisions. I want to mention a few other things before we get to the comments. Coming soon, so you probably have heard, there have been a lot of news stories about it. The Transit Center, freshly renovated, is now open. It's open for two reasons: to make a transaction, so to purchase a bus pass, and to get bus information. Our customer service reps have been working throughout the year answering your calls, but now they're able to sell you passes. Fare collection is going to start again on Monday, May 10th. Please, if you don't have a valid bus pass, which if you have an old 10 ride pass, should still work. If you have a 30-day pass you didn't activate, it will also work. Please do try to go into the Transit Center over the next week and a half to buy your passes. We haven't had a lot of people coming in for that, and we really want to avoid the rush. Everybody coming in the day before or the day of, we start collecting fares. So if you find yourself downtown and you need a new bus pass, please do stop by. They're open regular hours, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 9 to 5 on the weekends. So please avoid the rush. And then the other thing I want to tease a little here is the short range transit plan. This is something that we actually received a grant to create, and it'll be a 5-year short range transit plan. In order to do that, there's going to be a lot of public outreach, getting your take on what you want to see in the future for our service, what's working, what's not, creative ideas, all of that. And so stay tuned and participate. That will happen later this year. There'll be a lot of opportunities for interaction, hopefully some in person, likely some in person as well. So that's exciting to get back to that. So how to ask questions. Again, you're in listen only mode right now. You want to use the Q&A feature to ask your question. If you can't figure that out, or you want to hear your voice and want others to hear it as well, please raise your hand. When I do call on you, I will give you speaking privileges. You'll see a notification to unmute yourself. You'll click unmute and begin speaking, and you'll have 2 minutes. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to go to the Q&A. So I'll read out one of these questions here. Someone said, I was totally appalled to learn that the downtown shuttle is proposed for termination. This is a service that benefits local residents, businesses, and tourism alike. If State Street is closed, rerouting as a loop up Chapala and down Anacapa is totally feasible and currently used on farmers market days. As a downtown resident, I need this service restored. Certainly the city can find the necessary funds to restore it, and perhaps a special fleet of operators part-time could be employed. Those of us who live downtown without a car cannot wait for the State Street planning process to be completed for this service to be restored. Thank you for your question. It's not really a question, it's more of a comment, which is also fine. But definitely appreciate the sentiment. Understand you're not the first to bring that up. I think with reference to city funds, I would recommend, and I know a lot of people are, in addition to contacting us, contacting the city council. So I would definitely recommend contacting them with your concerns about what's possible. I have another question in the Q&A asking, when is freeway work expected to be completed? Are there chances it will be completed by August regarding Ogun Road stops? Good question. I'm fairly certain that the freeway work will not be completed by August. There's a lot of different phases and stages. I'm not 100% up on which ones begin and end when. So I don't totally have that information. I know that SBCAG has that info, and they have a lot of information on their website, and link to another website, which I don't have the URL for, but it's kind of the project website for the 101 HOV project. So feel free to put other questions in the chat. I do have one hand raised from Laura Lee, whose question I just read. But Laura Lee, I will allow you, oh, they put their hand down. Okay, so that question was answered. If there are any other questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A or to raise your hand. And, oh, there's one more. Okay. Hi, Hillary, can you tell me what school booster number I can take since the number 10 is not available? I sometimes visit a friend on Cathedral Oaks and Avenida Pequeña. Good question. So I want to make sure I get the number right. because our booster numbers are 4-digit. So it's the 2730 that serves Joseph Pueblos High School. And it runs once in the morning and once in the afternoon. So that's currently what it's doing. It is in our, the booster schedules are on our website, and it's built into Google Maps as well, and in our bus tracker. One thing I want to let people know, if you didn't know already, all of our real-time information is available in a couple different ways. On our website, it's available on a smartphone app called SBMTD Bus Tracker. It's free in the Google Play Store or the App Store. And then you can also get the information in Google Maps. So if you've ever looked up transit directions in Google Maps, it's there, real-time information. Our schedules have been in there for many years, so you can see routes and schedules when you're planning a trip, but the actual real-time information is in there as well. So to answer that question, School Booster, it's running right now. It won't be running in summer, so if you want to visit that friend, I would do it before the middle of the first week of June. That's when that one won't be running for now, as we still have the 10 suspended. Oh, and thank you, Barry, for sharing information about the 101 widening. If you go to HWY, short for Highway 101 Carpinteria.com, you can get information on that. And so I've sort of answered these questions in the Q&A. So if you go to Q&A, you can see that link and click on that if you like. Thanks, Barry, for doing the work there. So I do have a hand raised from Bob Burnham. I'm going to allow you to talk, Bob, and ask you to unmute. And if you can click to unmute, you should be able to hear you speak. There should be a prompt on your screen, Bob, asking you to unmute if you're able to hit enter or click that. And unfortunately, I don't have the ability to unmute you on my own. If you're on a phone, Bob, you can do *6 to unmute.
There we are.
Great, go
Hi.
ahead.
Hi, Hillary. Thank you for your presentation. I hope that MTD would definitively change your wording from termination to suspension on the State Street, the downtown waterfront shuttle service. I personally will work with the city and city council. It just seems very puzzling to have all this great service on State Street to Goleta, East Side, West Side, Line 3. And then when you get to downtown, it's basically a desert as far as ability to travel on transit, especially accessing the beach. There are cruise ships coming in later this year. I have friends coming in October on a cruise ship. I'm not sure how I'm going to get them to us or anywhere without probably taking a cab. So that's what we're confronted with. I'm hoping that you will change it from termination to suspension, because we have to work with the city in some definitive fashion, especially the parking district, to somehow be creative and get the funds available to continue the service. I understand MTD's position, lack of workforce. You've got the fleet, but I understand we're lacking personnel. But it really falls to the city, I think, to bear the burden of this. And so I'm, again, change termination to suspension, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, appreciate it. Yes, I wholeheartedly understand the perspective on that. It would be rather strange. And so, hopefully something about the partnership can get worked out. Whether it's immediate or not is one thing, but we want to make sure that we get, that we have the ability to do it. Those shuttles are currently running on the line 3, Oak Park, Cottage Hospital, Sansom, Foothills. So they are out there. And, eventually, pretty soon, we're going to have to make decisions about our fleet allocation and what goes where. So I appreciate that. Time is of the essence. I have another comment that says, I second Bob's request. So thank you, Marilyn. And yeah, any other questions or comments? If you want to put it in the Q&A or raise your hand. It's also okay if you want to just say, I agree with what that person said. That works too. And please do remember to take that survey, sbmtd.gov/service changes. So I'll give it maybe 1 more minute, and then we can end our time together tonight. But really want to thank you all for taking the time to join us, and encourage you to take that survey, give us feedback, let us know how it went, how this was for you. And I know we're all trying to figure out all this technology even a year in as it changes, and want to make it as accessible as possible. Also want to thank our interpreter, Viviana, for participating today to provide interpretation for whoever might need it. Waving to us. All right. One other comment. Let's see. Trish says, I agree. I hope the shuttle comes back in some way. It also went to the zoo. Good point. And Sarita asks, will this recording be on YouTube to watch again? Good question. We are actually live streaming to our YouTube channel right now, and it will be up. You can replay what you just saw, what just happened. So we will, that'll be posted right away to our YouTube channel, and feel free to share it with anyone you like. Also, if you can check out our YouTube channel and subscribe to it, so you'll know whenever we post a new video, that would be great. So if you just look for, it's actually, I think, Santa Barbara Metropolitan Transit District on YouTube, that's how you can check it out. So not seeing any more hands or questions. Appreciate you participating today, and want to wish you a good Wednesday, and